Welcome to the Ad Nauseam podcast, where classical gourmands everywhere can finally get their fill. Join us for a delectable discussion of Greco-Roman civilization stretching from the Minoans and Mycenaeans through the Renaissance and right down to the present. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here are your hosts, Dr. David Noe and Dr. Jeff Winkle.
Welcome, listeners, to episode 151 of our little podcast out here down in the bunker. In what part of Grand Rapids are we even
This
in?
is the southern part. This is Vomitorium South, where all the greats go to retch.
Is that where they go?
That's correct.
Okay. So, yes, I can never keep my directional straight.
That's understandable.
Yes. My name is Dr. Jeff Winkle. I'm down here in the bunker with my good friend and co-host, Dr. David Noe. Dave, the sun is shining.
Yes, it is.
It is warm. It's beautiful.
Balmy.
I'm going to guess you're having a great day.
I am.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm somewhere between good and great.
Okay, all right.
If I were to rate this day on a scale of 1 to 10, it's at least an 8.2.
Okay, you're not one for superlatives, as our listeners
I am
know.
not.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I am the least superlative of all people I know.
So what's the two things you hate?
The things I don't. It's not so much that I hate them.
Yes.
But I can't handle them.
Okay.
They don't have a good effect on me.
There's two things.
Yes, blame.
Yes.
And praise.
Praise. Gotcha. That's what it is.
Anything other than those two, I'm fine.
Okay.
So before you ask how I'm doing, Jeff, how are you doing?
I am doing just fine.
Yes.
I love the weather. Two of my sons are now out of school and
Great.
they're enjoying summer. I got one. My oldest is getting through his exams this week, and so it'll be nice to kind of have everybody together.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to keep them off their devices and getting them out into the woods.
So you don't want to leave them to their own devices, as the saying goes.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
But you're doing well?
I am doing well,
Yeah.
and I've been thinking lately.
Okay.
Back to childhood days. Speaking of kids,
Yeah.
when I grew up on the farm,
Yes.
as you know, and we had some cats.
Oh, yeah.
True story.
Just like farm cats?
Yeah,
Like-
farm cats.
Yeah.
One was named Midnight.
Yep.
And this was an all-black cat who seemed pretty smart on the whole. Mm-hmm. Had an unfortunate demise we won't go into.
Okay.
And the other one was named Muffin.
All right.
So Midnight and Muffin.
Yeah.
And thinking back, I have to say it was the best of times.
Yes.
It was the worst of times.
All right.
It was the age of wisdom. It was the age of foolishness.
Uh-huh.
It was the epoch of belief. It was the epoch of incredulity.
Yes.
It was the season of light. It was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope. And sometimes it was the winter of despair.
Yeah.
Me and those cats... those cats and me, we had everything before us. We had nothing before us.
Right.
We were all going direct to heaven. We were all going direct the other way. In short,
Yes.
me and these cats, the period was so far like the present period that some of its noisiest authorities insisted on its being received for good or for evil in the superlative degree of comparison only.
Yes. Okay. So
In fact, we were having a Dickens of a time. I think that you could say it was a tale of two kitties.
Oh man. Oh man. Well done.
Thank you.
Well done. It was a curveball. I was expecting something from the era of classic rock.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden you start off with some Dickens.
Yes.
And so okay, this is something new. That was great. That was fantastic.
Well, thank you.
Yes, I love it.
Little known fact: Dickens was paid by the word.
But I'm sorry, what?
He was paid by the word.
Was he really?
His novels were serialized.
Is that why they're so long?
Well, that's what some people say.
Yeah.
I love Dickens.
Do you really?
I love the bombast and the excessive flourish. But some people don't like him at all
Right.
because they think he is too verbose.
Yes.
They want a lean jejune style.
I gotcha.
You know, a style that hasn't eaten in days and it's starved and can just barely cough up a hairball of a word.
Right,
you know?
like a Hemingway.
That's right.
Right. Well,
I can't go for that.
That's interesting. I've heard that criticism leveled at Dickens as well. But in terms of if you would compare him to other novelists
Right.
of the 19th century, he's not alone.
No, he's not.
Right.
I think it was you who said of the late 19th century novels, more is more.
More is more.
Right.
Exactly. So yes,
Yeah.
but
A Tale of Two Kitties.
back there on the now I have to ask: did you really have two cats named Midnight?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I told you that part was true.
Okay. Well, okay. I never know.
They did not live at the same time.
Okay.
Right. Unlike Schrodinger's cat, one wasn't alive and dead at the same time.
Right.
They lived and died separately.
Gotcha.
Both were dear to my heart.
Gotcha, yeah.
Since that time, no interest in domesticated felines
Gotcha,
at all.
right.
How about you?
In terms of cat ownership,
Right.
I have a cat.
Oh.
Yes, its name is Luna.
Luna.
Yes, and she's delightful. She's wonderful. I think we've talked about this. I like cats because cats they do their own thing.
Yeah.
Right?
So what's
And-
the point in having a pet?
Well, dogs they're way too needy, right?
That's A cat's more like a kid without the possibility of them taking care of you in your old age.
maybe that's not a bad way to look at it. But I love how cats just kind of I respect.
I see.
I respect the cat.
You can't respect a dog because they're just too needy.
I like dogs. I've had dogs, but they're just too much work.
So we got to take it in another direction, maybe now.
We do.
The gauntlet has. No, I mean in terms of these. Opening gags.
Exactly. You steered us.
The gauntlet has been thrown down for you.
You steered us into kind of the realm of classic literature.
It could be.
Okay, all right.
Because when you tell people that you study classics, right, inevitably, what do they say? You mean like Elvis and the Beatles?
Yes.
No, other classics. Oh, you mean like Beethoven? Dickens. Right.
Right.
No. Go back a couple of thousand years more.
Yes.
That's just how it is.
It is how it is, right?
What are we talking about today, Jeffrey?
Well, we're gonna jump into part 2 of our look at Lucian of Samosata and his text, the Alexander the False Prophet, right? Which I think we just started to get into the text a little bit last time.
Yes.
But we're going to talk more about kind of his encounter and his story of this notable charlatan.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And then the guillotine of time came down upon us.
Yes.
And we were done.
Yes, that's right.
We have a shout out though.
Yeah, who's this going out to?
This is a new friend, the Reverend Rob Berhorst.
Uh-huh.
Which is a name that I like.
Okay, Berhorst,
right? Yeah, because I mean, if he talks too much and his throat gets a little bit irritated,
yes,
right, then he can just say, "Sorry, I'm Berhorst." So he says, "I am the pastor of the Linden First Baptist Church in Linden, California. My wife Stephanie and I have 2 daughters, Abigail and Adeline. I am working on my THM, that's a Theologiae Magister, at Puritan Seminary here in Grand Rapids, and I'm starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel." I say, "Rob, that's an oncoming train, so be careful." You want to pick it up there?
Sure. He says, after taking a class with Dr. Noe on Theodore Beza. Now, I didn't even know you taught classes on Theodore Beza.
I do.
I know you're a specialist and you translated his stuff, but I didn't know you taught classes. That's great.
Well, I like the way you're trying to make this shout out about me.
Well,
yes, I taught on Beza in January at a couple of different seminaries.
Okay.
But let's get back to Rob.
Yeah, so he says he took that class with you and says, I started listening to Ad Nauseam, beginning with the conversation with Kirk Summers, which was just a few weeks ago.
Yes.
He says, I appreciate the serious topics presented in a lively and humorous manner by the hosts. I walk away from each show with something new to ponder. In a recent episode, the discussion about the connection between knowing a topic and the ability to articulate it well was challenging and worth the price of admission.
Yes. And what about the little postscript?
TCB.
Yeah. You know what that is?
Is that taking care of business?
It is. Right. That's right. Because Rob, in an earlier correspondence, lobbed at me some kind of a barbed projectile.
Yes.
Because he wants to defend the dignity of Elvis's grave. Remember we talked about this?
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
And he likes it.
He likes the grave.
Yeah. Something like America has only one king.
Yes.
And he's buried in Memphis.
Right.
I think that's what Rob said.
Interesting.
So I thought it was a frozen yogurt reference or something. TCB.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, I know more about Elvis than I probably should.
Right.
But I know that he gave to his circle of friends, the so-called Memphis Mafia. They each had rings with TCB on it and a lightning bolt.
Taking care of business.
That's so. But I mean, I think to kind of side with Rob here. And have you been to
No
Elvis's
surprise.
grave?
No, I haven't.
Okay. All right. So I have stood at Graceland, and it would make no sense if Elvis's grave was tasteful.
Right.
Everything. I mean, it's completely
because
fitting.
he was garish.
Very garish. And so I think Elvis's grave has to be garish.
I see.
Right. All right.
Okay.
TCB.
And we have a corrigendum.
Oh, is this another mistake you made?
Yeah. I mean, they're starting to mount up. So what could we do? I think we have 2 options.
Okay.
We have 3.
All right.
I could not make them.
Yeah.
Which doesn't seem likely.
Yeah.
Second, I could ignore them. Or third, I could bore the audience by correcting each of them.
Okay.
So let's take the third option.
All right. So what went wrong?
Yes. Well, last time you were asking me about the milieu, right? In which Lucian of Samosata was working. You asked me to talk about paganism and Christianity in the early church, and I blathered on, and I said that Justin Martyr wrote the work Contra Celsum against Celsus, and that turns out to be erroneous.
I see.
It was written by Origen of Alexandria, and Justin Martyr wrote the Contra Tryphonum.
Okay.
So this was keeping you awake at night, wasn't it,
It
Jeff?
was, exactly.
Tossing and turning.
You got some of your contras mixed flipped
did.
around. Okay.
Yep.
Yes. All right.
A sort of a dance between contras, you might say.
Right. Exactly.
So do you have the opening quote?
I do. This comes from an article entitled Philosophers and Oracles, Shifts of Authority in Late Paganism. So just to look ahead, so this Alexander guy that Lucian's writing about, what he ultimately comes around to is he becomes kind of his own oracle.
Okay.
And he claims
Alexander, the prophet of the snake god.
the snake god, right? And he offers for a price to answer the questions about your future. And so this is an article about what was happening with oracles during this very time period that we're talking about, 2nd century.
So he's like a magic 8-ball, you would say.
Exactly.
Could you ask him for lottery numbers?
I suppose you could, if that were a thing going on there in northern Asia Minor.
Right.
So this is an article by one Polymnia Athanasiadi. I'm going to go on a limb and think that maybe she's Greek.
You think so? Right. Polymnia Athanasiadi?
Yes, from a journal called Byzantion back in 1992. She writes, by the early 2nd century, people and oracles had become so quotidian that Plutarch went so far as to suspect a drying out of the supernatural. This is a quote from Plutarch. We know of the recent exhaustion of mines, for example, the silver mines of Attica and the copper ore in Euboea. Could not the prophetic current have run out in a similar fashion, he asked, using in support of his argument Aristotelian science and logic? Yet...
Can we pause there?
Please.
Because that's just really fascinating.
Okay.
So... prophetic oracles are like a natural resource.
They've been mined out.
And if you keep tapping into them, eventually it's going to run dry?
Exactly.
That's really fascinating.
So it's like Plutarch sees the oracles. This is a pop culture phenomenon.
Right.
Right. And it's a fad.
Oh, it's a fad.
And it's kind of, he's saying, well, maybe it's run its course. Right.
And so there's no more supernatural because the vein has been tapped.
Yes.
It's like you pull the tap on a keg of beer and you get to the bottom. So I'm told. You get to the bottom of it, and you shake it. There's nothing left. Just a few drops of oracular wisdom coming out, and then that's the end.
Yes, exactly right.
It's an interesting metaphor for impartation of divine knowledge.
Yes, but Ms. Athanasiadi goes on. She says, yet Plutarch spoke too soon. For it was at about that time that the Indian summer of the Greek oracle set in. From the beginning of the 2nd century to the middle of the 3rd, we witnessed an extraordinary flowering of oracular activity, especially in Asia Minor, which is exactly the time and place we're talking about. Most of the great oracles were ancient foundations like Claros and Didyma, which after a period of progressive decline reemerged with a new persona. Through imperial munificence, work was resumed on their half-finished or dilapidated buildings, while both the number and type of people involved in the giving of oracles and the number and the manner of consultation were reformed.
Okay, so there's a flowering, a new birth, right?
Yes.
A new what's the word? A new field, a new vein of oracular knowledge was discovered.
Yes.
Someone shouted, Eureka.
Yes.
Right? And then it gushed forth in a geyser from the earth.
Right.
Divine knowledge spilling out over the landscape.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And so I think that in considering Alexander as one of these DIY oracular figures, that seems to fit exactly with what she's describing here. So Plutarch got it wrong. It was actually quite the opposite.
Interesting.
There was you had your official oracles. You had Didyma, you had Delphi, Dodona.
Right.
But there was also kind of this wave of, hey, this prophet just came to town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that prophet is Alexander, the false prophet.
Yes.
Right? Of the snake god.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's going to get us into the Second Sophistic.
Right. I think we mentioned this a little bit last time, but as I was doing some prep, I thought we might some more detail here.
We've talked about it, and Jeff, we can never assume that our audience, has remembered everything we've said.
Of
since
course.
Even we don't.
That's right.
They're not taking notes. They're listening while they're jogging, while they're driving to and from work. Yeah. Maybe the gentle droning of our voices helps them fall asleep at night.
Right, exactly. Or maybe they're rage listening, just waiting to
What's rage listening? I don't know this.
They're listening for the simple expectation that they're going to be irritated.
Oh, okay. Right? That's a new term for me. Is that like is it like doom scrolling?
Well, it's
rage
like
listening?
Rage listening or like rage quitting. Right.
I realize now this is how I listen to most music.
I do a lot of rage listening.
Yes. I'm just waiting for that one note or that warble just to set me off.
Right. I mean, do you have this? Are there certain songs that you'll listen to that you don't like them, but you kind of like being irritated by them?
Yes.
And you'll let it play anyway?
I can't think of any examples. Oh, I know one.
Yes.
The Wham song about Christmas. special.
The last Christmas.
Yes.
Yeah, I would put that in that camp for me too.
That's Wham, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Right.
Yep. And the one that I always think of is George Thorogood's "One Bourbon, One Scotch, One Beer."
But I like that song.
Okay, we can talk about that later. But it's one of those that I always like to play because I'm always under this this illusion that maybe it'll be better this time.
So the Second Sophistic,
right?
We're going to talk about it again because we know that our audience really wants to have some basic mastery of this knowledge. So take it away there, Dr. Winkle.
So the Second Sophistic, the bracket of dates usually given for that is from roughly kind of after the reign of Nero, so roughly 60s AD until about 230, which is about the time like the Roman Empire starts to really kind of show its cracks. Right. It's the era after Marcus Aurelius in the era of the so-called good emperors, right?
The 5 good ones.
The 5 good ones. And so this is...
So if I may, why is it called the Second Sophistic? I mean, maybe we missed the first one.
Well, it's a kind of it's a term. What accent am I starting to do that? Yeah. Toin it up. It's a term coined by Philostratus, who was another author from this very period.
Okay.
And it usually has to do with it's kind of a second flowering of rhetoric, right? Which in our talk of Maru's book, right? How rhetoric becomes the focus of education, right? On the heels of Plato's Academy and the like. So
Gorgias of Leontini,
yes,
Protagoras and Prodicus and those guys.
Yeah, that's our first.
That's the first Sophistic.
Yes.
Okay.
And so this is another time where the focus, maybe not so much of, as we talk, yes, education, but also in terms of you want to display your knowledge.
Okay.
You got to be a good speaker. You got to be a good performer. And so the Second Sophistic is marked by these public displays of erudition and playfulness and winning over your audience with your sheer skill. And so the focus is on, yes, what you're saying and maybe what you've written, but it's how you're performing it is the key thing.
Okay.
And so I'm sure Lucian, we're talking about Alexander the false prophet. What was this text? It was very likely a performance piece.
Yeah.
Right. And it has a lot of that kind of playfulness and sarcasm and edge to it.
Right.
That you can imagine this would go down well as a kind of snarky public performance.
Now it occurs to me, Dr. Winkle, that we might be living in the third or fourth Sophistic.
How so?
Well, because if you spend any time on the YouTubes.
Yes, I do.
And, as a person of substance, as you are, you've got an advanced degree, you've taught. I'm going to butter you up a little bit here.
Thank you.
You've taught for many years. You've read a lot of good books. You have some accomplishments in music and the arts. You're a friend of the muses. But then you go on the YouTubes, and what do you find? That the most popular individuals are the ones who have very little substance,
yes,
but they have figured out something that's highly performative.
Right, yes.
So it's like a third Sophistic. For example, did you know that you can find a person online whose sole shtick is to find the answer to questions that occur to people in a kind of a random way, and then they drop them and they discard them? How long will a disposable lighter burn? Right?
Yeah.
Before it runs out?
Yeah.
There is a video. I haven't watched it. I've been told about it. I've seen it. A person does just this. He lights the disposable lighter, and then he just holds it while it burns, and he times it. And this whole thing is filmed, and it's hugely, immensely, wildly popular.
Wow.
And why? Because it's purely performative. There's no skill. There's no learning. There's a number of things like that. Is that similar to the sophistic mentality of the Second Sophistic?
I hadn't thought about that way, but I think you're definitely onto something, right? I look at some of the things that my sons will kind of scroll through and kind of the YouTubes that they like, and it makes me think of I feel like Plutarch. I hope that this vein is about to run dry.
Yeah,
and it does seem very faddish. That how long can something like that go on?
Yes.
How long can we just be endlessly distracted?
Right. Decades, I would guess.
I suppose. Yeah.
I think that's a possibility.
Yeah.
No, we might say there's a little bit of a difference between that and the Second Sophistic, because these individuals, they were trying to perfect their art.
I suppose. Yes.
But it wasn't art for the sake of the pursuit of truth, things as in Plato's world.
No.
It's just kind of having an effect.
There is definitely It's another reason I kind of like your comparison. There is a cynicism about this kind of stuff. And I see that over this work we're talking about today as well. I was also thinking about kind of this era. Now, this doesn't really have to do much with kind of falling under the definition of the Second Sophistic, but that 2nd century is a really unique era. I do think we're seeing one of these eras where there's a shifting away from kind of a period of broad rationalism given away to a period of mysticism. So
Okay.
One of these questions that fascinates me is if looking back through history and you see kind of these rhythms through history. Not to say that
You're going to give us a Hegelian cyclical take here?
Well, I mean, I think there's something fascinating about it. So if you look at the what we would call the classical era giving way to Hellenism, if you look at the shifts in architecture and art, you move from something very quite austere and geometric to something kind of wild and chaotic.
Florid,
right? If you look at kind of the transition from the 18th century to the 19th century and the move from kind of Enlightenment rationalism to the Romantic era, you see another similar kind of thing. So are we seeing a similar kind of shift here? Is that there is a kind of return to Plato, kind of a flowering of Platonism, but Platonism is becoming Middle and Neoplatonism. It's becoming fused with kind of this metaphysical mysticism.
Right.
In a way that probably Plato never intended.
Well, I think he definitely never intended it. Specifically, you could say because it is abstracted from the life of the polis. So as we've been going through Mahru recently, and he's not the subject of this episode, but it really came home to me how much Plato was interested in political reform.
Yeah.
Sending his students to various city-states to try to inaugurate some kind of a just society.
Right.
That's gone because of Alexander, because of Augustus, because of the enormous bureaucratic reach of the Roman Empire.
Right.
So what are you left with?
Yeah. That's very well said. And so the question comes around to kind of Plato's notion of the soul. Right. It becomes much more kind of atomized and individualized. Right. So I just thought trying to kind of understand this prophet, this oracle, in terms of that. Could he also be kind of a symptom of this era that is like in the Romantic era, kind of interested in ghosts and the supernatural, right? He would fit in with something like Mary Shelley's Frankenstein or Edgar Allan Poe, or kind of the bombast of Beethoven's music. Are we seeing a similar kind of thing there?
Interesting,
right? So let me ask you.
Yes, please.
I mean, this is probably too much of a tangent. I mean, what is your general opinion of kind of the idea of the cycles of history, and that we do see kind of these rhythms throughout? Not in a way that we can say, well, we this is where we are now, and this is probably where we're going.
Right.
Not to use it as kind of a predicative model,
I see.
But that we do see a kind of repetition in culture.
Well, I have a couple of thoughts on that.
Please.
I would go back to the book of Ecclesiastes.
Okay.
Qoheleth, or Solomon, saying, "There's nothing new under the sun." So, because I believe in the static nature of the staticness of human nature, the stability of it. Apart from grace, human nature is nauseatingly dull and boring and predictable.
Yeah.
Right? Unless there's some renewal of grace, human nature is going to be the same.
Yeah.
So yes, there's going to be a high degree of predictability in the way that people respond to their environment and the kind of environments that they create. Specifically, They create things that they believe are brand new, and then it takes someone else to remind them, actually, this has been done before, and you're not doing it as well, is often what happens. On the other hand, right, I think this can be taken too far, and the consensus opinion is that Augustine of Hippo in City of God, among other things, that work is a broadside against a prevailing cyclical view of history that the Greeks and the Romans had pretty much adopted. And he wrote that work in part to say, no, history has a definite beginning in God's creative activity, and it has a definite terminus. And that terminus will be a final judgment. And so Augustine is usually credited with giving history a linear orientation, which previously it didn't have.
Right.
Now, the Stoics, they would say the world is an endless cycle ending in a cosmic conflagration. Everything burns up. And so there is an intermediary terminus, you might say. About every 10,000 years, the whole thing is immolated, just burned to a crisp.
Okay.
Like when you keep your marshmallow in the campfire too long.
Yes.
Not the nice toasty brown, but
Right.
it just becomes ash.
Yes.
But then it starts again, and it runs for another 10,000 years. So although it seems to have an end point, it truly is cyclical. Augustine interrupted that. And I think that he was so successful that even non-theistic people today, generally, I don't think believe in a cyclical view of history. It's too pessimistic for them.
Yeah.
They naturally want to think this is going somewhere, even
Right.
if they don't think in terms of, a parousia, like a final judgment or some good or bad ending. They have a belief in a kind of progress. We're headed somewhere.
Yes.
It's not just going to endlessly repeat.
Right. No, I think that's very right. I've definitely encountered what I take to be very kind of naive, kind of secular notions of eternal progress.
Right.
That, and often coupled with as technology
Right.
gets fancier.
Right.
And so too the human experiment gets better.
Yes.
Right. Which I don't.
There's no basis for that.
No, it's quite the opposite. Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think we live in kind of more. I haven't heard that recently. I think we live in kind of a cynical era.
We do.
Where both.
Well, there was the very famous essay in the 1990s, Francis Fukuyama,
The End of History.
The End of History.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
I think that now has been pretty much abandoned. It was very popular at the time and had some persuasive value.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah.
All
Well,
right.
this is all very interesting, but
Yes, it is.
But what does this have to do with?
Well, I think we're talking about Lucian.
Yes.
Other elements in this era, the Second Sophistic, growing cosmopolitanism.
Yeah.
The borders of the Roman Empire are secure.
Right.
There's no longer any expansion. It reached its apex under Trajan.
Right.
117 approximately.
Yes. Yeah.
Then they began to shrink from that point. And then you have something here in the script, which I
Yeah.
thought was interesting. The shift from the 18th to the 19th century, rationalism gives way to romanticism, or
Yeah.
what would Voltaire have thought of Mormonism?
Right.
Is
Well,
that you? Did you come up with that
I came up
phrase?
with that, right.
What does it mean, Winkle?
Well, I mean, it's trying. So I was trying to think of kind of two figures or two, events or cultural things that were happening fairly close to one another, right?
Okay.
So you have, Voltaire as kind of representing maybe the apex of French Enlightenment, rationalism,
Right.
individualism, humanism, and then you have the arrival of Mormonism.
Joseph Smith.
Yes, in the in New York in the early 19th century, these two figures are very close to one another, right? And there's a lot of what Alexander is up to that reminds me a lot of kind of the story of Joseph Smith and his golden plates. And so you have and it kind of makes me think of Plutarch. Plutarch is kind of my Voltaire here. He's thinking, kind of the age of oracles. That's done, right?
Right.
We're more rational than that. This
Right.
is over, right? So what would Voltaire have thought about this very kind of mystical, brand new religion,
Right.
arising from the dirt in Palmyra, New York?
Right.
These are radically different things happening
good point.
very close to one another.
That's a good point. So I just checked. Voltaire, I think, died in 1778.
Okay.
And we got Joseph Smith in the 1840s, 1830s.
Okay.
So really quite close together.
Right,
And
right.
could not be more different in outlook and mentality.
Exactly.
If we take both of them as sincere in their professions.
Sure, exactly.
Right. I mean, if Smith was not I don't know if we have any LDS listeners.
Right.
But if we do, they're probably going to be alienated now.
Yeah, right.
If he was sincere in his beliefs, or if it was more like Alexander, the false prophet,
Right.
I don't know. But assuming, for the sake of charity, he's sincere in his beliefs, and we can say the same thing about Voltaire.
Yeah.
Assuming that he is sincere in his beliefs that rationalism can indeed solve all of the problems of human society.
Exactly.
They could hardly be more different.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I talk about Smith in the religions class I teach, right? And there's I think one of the issues, of course, is that when you compare Joseph Smith and the LDS to the other religions, he's so much closer to us, and that's a different kind of lens. And so
The us.
to like in terms of chronology.
Oh,
right. He's
closer to the contemporary era.
This is a couple hundred years ago.
Got it.
As opposed to Hinduism 8,000 years.
Correct.
And so it offers itself to I think a different kind of scrutiny. And so when we hear stories about Joseph Smith in the state of New York digging up the golden plates, it's very easy for people outside of that to scoff and say, how ridiculous.
Right.
But Smith was he was one of these guys that he got his start in the fields of mysticism by using like these seer stones, and he would find these stones he would claim to kind of to predict the future. Now you isolate that seems, this sounds like a charlatan, but when you consider the era, there were lots of people doing this, and there were hundreds, thousands of people who believed in this kind of stuff. And so when I read the biographies and the stories about Joseph Smith, I come away convinced that he absolutely believed what he was doing was true, and that he did not have, I'm going to bilk all these people out of money, and I'm going to do this so I can marry multiple women.
Right.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's probably a good place to end our digression into
all right.
how Alexander the False Prophet of Lucian of Samosata and the Second Sophistic might compare to more recent events.
Right. Exactly. Thank you for bringing us back.
You're welcome.
On track here. All right, so I believe, Dave, in our last episode, we got somewhere around section 5 in Lucian's text.
Right.
And so what we learn is about some of Alexander's background is that, of course, Lucian is very cynical.
Correct.
Right? He said this guy's a charlatan from the very beginning, and so the whole text is kind of colored by that slant. And he doesn't want us to think otherwise. So he says that Alexander was led astray from a very early time in his life. He was kind of taken in by what we might call like these medicine shows and the hucksterism.
Right.
And,
the traveling wagon apothecary selling snake oil.
Exactly. And so he becomes an acolyte of one of these early guys, and as he becomes the student to the master.
And there's some suggestion of an illicit relationship as well.
Yes, of course.
Right.
And we learned that his master was a follower of Apollonius of Tyana, who is another one of these notable kind of wandering miracle workers.
Wasn't he a legitimate philosopher, though, Apollonius of Tyana?
Yeah, I believe so. But then he goes the mystical route.
Okay.
And he becomes the kind of the wise man with special powers.
Yeah. So my desire to distinguish between legitimate philosopher and traveling quack. That my Platonism is showing there.
Yes,
I suppose.
Yeah.
Because the men of that generation wouldn't distinguish necessarily.
Right. Yeah. True.
Lucian maybe is trying to.
Yes, I think he's trying to draw a line, but
generally not.
Yeah, exactly.
So what happens when the master dies?
He hooks up with another guy.
Alexander does,
and someone who Lucian names as Cocconas.
Okay.
And this guy becomes Alexander's partner in crime. He's very much interested in kind of using these techniques and preying upon people and their mystical beliefs or their desire to really want to believe this stuff.
Interesting.
And he says we can make a lot of money here.
Interesting.
Yep.
Speaking about making a lot of money.
Oh yeah.
It's not time for the ads.
Oh, it's not time for the ads?
No, I was going to mention the book by Chernow. I think it's by Chernow. Titan, about J.D. Rockefeller.
Yeah.
I think that's by Chernow.
Are you reading this?
No, I read it.
Oh, you read it? Okay, yeah.
Previously. And J.D. Rockefeller's, we talked about it a little bit.
Yeah.
His father was a man named Big Bill, William Rockefeller, and he was a full-on shyster.
Really?
Going from town to town, multiple marriages, bilking people out of lots of money.
Really?
Rockefeller spent his entire life seeking to live down that reputation.
Oh, man.
That he was himself an honest businessman. But as the biography is told, part of the theme is he wasn't so different from his dad. I'm not sure that's true, but it provided a good story.
I mean, does Chernow kind of suggest that JD was kind of a charlatan himself, but just under the banner of kind of legitimate business?
That is the subtext.
Okay, interesting.
Or that he had a lot of his father's same gifts and skills in terms of getting what he wanted out of people.
Yeah.
But yeah, he tried to do it in a way that was above the books.
Interesting.
And speaking about being above the books...
Now is it time for the ads?
Now it's time for the ads.
Let's do it. This episode of Ad Nauseam is brought to you by Ratio Coffee. Dave,
yes.
I'm guessing that, like me, you enjoyed a good cup of coffee brewed by your Ratio 8 this morning.
I did
right?
several, actually.
Yeah?
Yep. I'm kind of mixing up my calf and my decaf.
Yes. Oh, really?
I don't know if that's orthodox, but I'm risking it.
You're risking it.
I'm trying to reduce the caffeine a little bit.
I gotcha.
Ground it in my brazza grinder and brewed it up. It was excellent as always. How about you, Jeff?
I did too. It was great. I had kind of the house to myself this morning, which is very rare. And so I brewed up.
Put some golfers in there. Oh, sorry, Folgers in there.
No Folgers. I got a little bit a better taste than Folgers. But
Maxwell's House.
something like that. A little Maxwell House Grand.
Right.
Yeah. And so I brewed it up. I made a whole pot just for myself. And
none for the lovely Beck?
she was out of the house early this morning. She had kind of a wrap-up thing at her school, and so it was all for me.
That's a tub of crock.
Yeah, from her point of view, a total tub of crock. But for me, it was delightful, and I'm always amazed, especially when I get coffee from some
Don't do it.
barn and beanery.
Don't do it. You're going to regret it.
I know you're going to regret it.
You're going to have brewer's remorse. There's no doubt.
You're going to be out $7,
right?
And you're saying I should have just done this at home.
That's correct.
That's right. So, listeners, if you want one of these wonderful machines, the Ratio 8 or its younger brother, the Ratio 6, or coming soon, the Ratio 4.
Let's hear about the 4.
What do you got? You got something on the 4 there?
I do.
Yep.
Apparently, it's as easy as pods.
Yes.
But so much better.
Okay.
Do you ever wonder, Jeff, what the convenience of a Keurig really costs?
Hourly.
Okay.
Yes.
We did too. On average, it costs $33 to $50 per pound.
Wow.
Depending on the roaster. And this is for mediocre coffee brewed with haste and waste at the forefront into throwaway plastic pods.
Yes.
They got those marsupods. There's a little bit of Joey in every sip.
Exactly. No good.
We offer a better way. Why don't you buy fresh from your local roaster and have the 4 brew up a cup? The taste will be monumentally better. Tell us about the 4, Jeff.
So the 4, it is not out yet, but we're really excited to announce its launch. The first affordable and beautiful half-batch pour-over coffee machine. It's Ratio's smallest brewer yet, an agile, sleek machine that puts out between 5 and 20 ounces of coffee per batch, enough for 1 to 2 reasonably sized cups or 1 big travel mug.
Does it have the bloom cycle?
It does. It brooms with a bloom cycle in about 4 minutes or less, and it has a removable water tank that can be positioned on the left, right, or behind.
Is it small enough to fit on any countertop?
Absolutely. It is built to last and is backed by a 5-year warranty.
5 years?
Right.
You can't get that on a vehicle.
No way.
Right.
No way. So if our listeners who've been listening for a while have maybe wanted a Ratio machine, but they've thought, hey, that's still a little bit too rich for my blood, this might be the answer.
Yes, and it's coming out this fall.
Fantastic.
And I think it's going to make Ratio a household name. I really do. I think you're going to find Ratios in all hotels and places like that where you want to get an 8-ounce or 20-ounce, a couple of cups, and put them in your travel mug. I think you want to get in on the ground floor with this one.
Absolutely.
But if you can't wait for the 4, you can still score a 6 or an 8. What should they do?
Go to ratiocoffee.com. That's RATIO coffee.com. Click on the machine you want and type in this coupon code, ANCOA8. Is the coupon code. That will get you 15% off your entire order.
Yes, and Jeff, what does the A stand for?
I'm going to default to awesome, but that's kind of boring.
That was a little predictable.
A little predictable, exactly. Yeah. You got something better over there?
I don't.
Okay.
No.
All right. But that
ANCOA8.
Yes.
8.
And that will get you 15% off. Do it.
Check it out. This episode is also brought to you by Crackit Publishing.
Crackit?
Yeah.
Did these guys got in touch with you?
Yeah, they publish books on broken foundations, unrepaired sidewalks, how to break an egg.
Yeah.
You've never read anything by Crackit Publishing?
I probably have, but this is news to me. I didn't know that these guys were looking to support the podcast.
Yeah, they contacted us and said, we want to be a part of Ad Nauseam, and people really want to read about broken and fragile things. We have a long line of books of this kind.
I got to say, this sounds like a terrible idea.
Does it?
Right.
Okay.
Can we boot these guys?
Let's boot them, and actually...
Yes?
We can talk about Hackett Publishing.
Oh, that sounds much better. Yes. So HackettPublishing.com. As our regular listeners know, these guys have been with us from pretty much the beginning, almost 4 years on now. They've been around for a lot longer than 4 years.
53.
53. They've got offices in Indianapolis, Indiana, and Cambridge, Massachusetts. And they are keeping the flames alive in terms of supporting the classics, providing text, multiple translations.
Right. With a very narrow catalog, right?
No.
They've got The Republic, one title by Aristotle, and that's it?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Dave. They've got all kinds of titles across the realm of Greco-Roman studies, but from every kind of corner.
South American,
yes.
East Asian, modern philosophy, Japanese.
Yes.
a wide array of titles.
Right. And what you can count on from Hackett is you're going to get high quality translations, high quality writing, and in a very attractive, affordable package. And that's a very difficult combo to find out there.
Yes, you as a professor, when you assign books to your students, you don't have to have them buy like a $250 Basics of Chemistry 7th edition.
No.
It comes out each year. You can say, you can buy all the books for my course from Hackett and probably get them for $60 to $70 or less.
Absolutely.
And these are beautiful. They're well researched, well translated, and nicely put together.
Indeed. When I look for books for my students, and even when I look books for myself, Hackett is where I look first. So, listeners, do yourself a favor. Dave, where should they go?
HackettPublishing.com, HACKETT, not Crackett. And when you get there, look around. It's a really well done website, very intuitive and nicely organized. Put some choices into your little satchel, your grocery basket, and when you get to checkout, you're going to want to add a coupon code here. Enter AN ad nauseum, and then the current year, AN2024. And Jeff, what will that get them?
That will get them two incredible things, 20% off your entire order and free shipping.
Check it out. All right, Jeff, so as we get back into it here after the break, where are we headed next?
So we are headed to Macedonia, actually.
Okay.
So Alexander and his partner in crime, Cocconas, they go off to Macedonia, and this is where they encounter, apparently, this cult of Glycon. And there's archaeological evidence for this. This is not something that Alexander and Cocconas simply made up. There was a small cult centered around the snake god Glycon.
Okay.
And these two guys...
Glycon again meaning sweetie?
Sweetie, yes. And so they see an opportunity to bilk some people.
Okay.
The translation that we're using, they refer to these people as fatheads. We're looking for fatheads that we can easily kind of take advantage of.
So what are they going to do? They're going to roll up next to the snake shrine and set up a food truck? They're going to be selling elephant ears and deep fried pickles and things like that?
Something like that, exactly.
Kind of an ice cream truck? I'm on a riff here.
Yeah.
So. What kind of ice cream would they be selling next to a snake shrine?
Oh my goodness! What goes with the
snake cult? What kind of ice cream flavors goes with snake cult?
That's
I'm at a loss.
Me too. Exactly.
Maybe the listeners can send in some suggestive titles.
Right.
Maybe better pecan. I don't know.
So what they do is they encounter the snake cult and they end up buying a snake, a big, fully grown snake.
This is not like a stuffed one at the gift shop?
No, this is the real deal.
A real deal.
And they decide, okay, we're going to start kind of our own kind of transportable cult here.
Franchise.
Right. And by getting this snake from Macedonia, where there is a rich history of connecting the snakes to the divine. And,
that's correct.
They say we can use that to legitimize ourselves.
Alexander's mother.
Right. Exactly.
Olympia, right?
Yep. Lucian even mentions that story.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Supposedly Alexander was born from a snake?
Yes, exactly. Right. And so they're using that to kind of to make their pitch.
Have you ever owned a snake? Done any herpetology?
I did. I had a garden snake in a like an aquarium when I was growing up.
That seems a little cruel.
Well,
did you ever like take it out on a leash and let it get some yard time?
I used to kind of take it out and let it kind of crawl around and in my hands, but I never took it for a walk or a slither.
You hear these stories from time to time. This has got to be the most disturbing thing. Someone who has a very large exotic snake in their apartment, and it gets out of its terrarium.
Yeah,
and then they don't know where it is. Have you read those stories?
I've had my father.
Okay.
Had it was a colleague of his. He taught high school biology, and his partner teacher in the classroom next door had a python.
Okay.
In a
who doesn't
in a glass case, and it got out. And they did not know it was. And my dad.
So it was in the school.
It was in the school somewhere.
This sounds like a young adult fiction story.
This is absolutely true. It's absolutely true.
Swallowing students.
And one day my dad went in on the weekend to kind of set some stuff up for the week.
Right.
And he reached into one of these, he opened up one of these high wooden cabinets.
Yes.
And he opened it up and there was, I forget the name of the snake, but there it was coiled up, sitting there taking a snooze.
I think it was Sweetie.
my dad fell over the desk.
I'll bet.
About had a heart attack.
Huh.
Yes.
So that's the extent of your herpetological endeavors.
Do you remember? Do you remember?
Are we going to digress again?
Just one more thing. Do you remember the escape of Big Sid in
No.
Standale?
No.
Late 70s.
Standale, Michigan?
Standale, Michigan. There's
Big Sid?
Big
Was
Sid
this
was
the guy that owned the hardware store?
That's a different Big Sid.
Okay.
But there was a large, I believe it was a python or a boa constrictor named
my.
Big Sid. And it was like a local news story for many, many weeks. And people were terrified.
Yeah.
That, watch out, Standalians.
Yeah.
The Big Sid is lurking somewhere. Right.
So they pick up their own legitimate snake.
Yes, they do.
And they think we're going to use this one now to cash in on the popularity of snake god worship.
Right. And so then they have an argument because where would be the best place to do this?
Oh, they should have just asked ChatGPT to draw up a business plan.
Exactly. Right, exactly. But this being 1,800 years ago, a bit before that
I
time.
guess it's a
right.
problem.
So Alexander, he wants to go up to Paphlygonia, northern Asia Minor.
Those Paphlagonians,
Oh,
they're dupes.
Easy marks. Fatheads around every corner up there. And he says, it's perfect. He says the people they're gullible and they've got loads of cash.
Yeah.
Let's
Classics
go there.
majors primarily.
Right. Right.
Sell them anything.
Exactly right. And classics majors, I mean, wealthy, right? Flush
So
with cash.
they go to Abonoteichus, right?
Yes, exactly.
To meet the perfect combo, the mark who is both gullible and rich.
And rich, right.
What more could you want?
Cocconas disagrees a bit. He wants to go to Chalcedon. And
So the two main characters here, I know that the audience is mostly interested in the digressions, but
Yes.
for those few who are following the through line of the story here, we've got Cocconas and Alexander, the false prophet, as told by Lucian.
Yes.
And Cocconas and Alex have their own snake now.
Yes.
And they're trying to find people to bilk, and they're arguing about whether they should go to Paphlygonia,
Yes.
to the town of Abonoteichus, or whether they should go to Chalcedon.
Yes.
Chalcedon, famous for the creed that was developed there.
Oh, right.
About 200 years after these events.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that, but yes,
Yeah.
exactly right. And so Cocconas stays behind.
Okay.
And he
What for?
well, they just he thought apparently I think Lucian suggested Chalcedon in Chalcedon. He says, no, you're going to find even more stupid people to take advantage of. This is the better mark.
Okay.
So they part ways. And so Alexander takes the snake and he goes off to Paphlygonia. And Lucian tells us that Cocconas, he makes a go of it composing fake oracles, but he eventually dies from a snake bite.
Huh. Now, does he buries some bronze tablets, does he not?
Yes.
Am I getting ahead of ourselves?
No. So Alexander, he's thinking ahead and he says, okay, how am I going to legitimize this stuff? The snake is good, but it's not enough. And so he says,
Does the snake do any tricks?
well, that's coming later. Yes, exactly. He does a very bizarre thing with this snake, which we'll get to.
To my knowledge, I'm just intent on interrupting you all along the way.
Please.
Snakes can't really be trained. I've never seen a trained snake other than when, the cobra charmers.
Oh, right.
They play this
the
instrument.
music and they kind of sway back and forth.
Yeah, they
Right.
come up out of their basket. I mean, if cartoons have taught me anything, it's pretty easy.
They just, yeah.
But other than that, I've never seen a snake ride a bicycle. Or balance a beach ball like a seal would do.
That's true. They seem very untrainable. Right, exactly. So
Maybe it's the lack of appendages.
that would certainly hold them back, I think. Right. So Alexander, what he does is he buries some bronze tablets, and Lucian doesn't tell us where does he get these, does he make them, but he buries them and then miraculously discovers them. And on these bronze tablets, and then he's the only one that can translate them. And it says that
So what's on the tablets?
the tablets say that Asclepius, the god, is on the move.
Asclepius, the son of Apollo.
Right. And so he's that rare god who actually dies.
Yes.
And he's apparently buried in the Tholos in Epidaurus.
Whose shrine is that, I was going to say?
Yeah.
Epidaurus, right?
Epidaurus, exactly.
And we've been there, haven't we?
Yes, we have.
It's on the Peloponnese.
It's a fascinating place.
The best preserved theater from antiquity
Incredible.
is in Epidaurus.
It's unbelievable.
Along with a hospital there.
Yeah.
People would go to the shrine to get healed by Asclepius and his snake goddery.
That would be, we got to do that as an episode. That would be
Yeah,
fantastic.
the number of episodes we got to do is just getting enormously large.
Exactly.
We
We should
mostly just like to talk about them.
Right, exactly. We should actually write these down.
Nah.
Forget it. Yeah. So Asclepius is on these tablets. It kind of announces I'm being reborn.
Okay.
And not just that, but he said the tablets say I'm going I'm going to Pontus and to Abonoteichus in particular. So these tablets announce that the arrival of the god is imminent. And so Alexander...
So Alexander put this whole thing together,
Yes.
inscribed them on these bronze tablets, buried them. How did he go about the process of discovery? I mean, there were no iPhones or something like that to film, where he just happens to be walking through the forest and stubs his toe on a little bit of the tablet that's emerged from the ground.
Yeah.
How do you make this predictable?
I don't know.
You got to invite people on a picnic or something, and then when you lean back on the blanket, you just get a tablet in the back.
Right. Exactly. Oh, what is that? Let me have a look at that. My goodness, Asclepius is on his way.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Lucian doesn't fill in those gaps, right? But it reminds me of, the more cynical interpretations of Schliemann and the Mask of Agamemnon, that he had it made, buried it.
Forgery, went off to Paris.
Yes, and then discovered it on his own. It reminds me very much of that.
Yes.
But it also, it reminds me of the more cynical readings of Joseph Smith, right?
Going back to LDS.
Right. Now, one of the problems with the golden plates is that, there were witnesses who claimed to have seen them, but they've disappeared. And when Smith translated them with his magical stones or
he said they were hieroglyphs, did he not?
Right,
Egyptian hieroglyphs,
kind of a mix of Egyptian hieroglyphs and other things. They were just a distinct language that only by looking through these stones or these goggles he could translate them.
There was no Google Translate,
right? So in this case, Lucian suggests that there were actual bronze tablets that Alexander had made and showed them to legitimize his enterprise. And so then Alexander goes in to Abonoteichus with his long flowing hair. Lucian tells us that he was a good looking guy.
He was impressive.
And so he comes in and he starts spouting oracles and claiming that he is born from the lineage of Perseus and Asclepius. So he's ready to step in and to be the medium,
prophet.
The medium.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
This is why you and I could never be shysters.
Why is that?
They're too physically unimpressive.
I know, exactly. Right. It's probably for the better.
You think so?
Yeah, I think so.
So Alexander is ready to step in.
He's ready to step in, right? And
to use his good looks, his persuasive Second Sophistic oratory, and to cash in on the arrival of Asclepius. And does the snake god, is he kind of faded into the background now? Or?
He's just it's waiting to be sprung.
We're right on the edge.
Let me read a bit of the translation from 11, and I'm going to set you up to read some Greek.
Okay, waiting to be sprung.
Yes.
Is this like the old
gag
Pringles can?
Exactly.
Do you remember first encountering that as a child?
It's terrifying.
Oh, it was so much fun. To
cram that
thing
spring in there
down into the Pringles can and get somebody to take the lid off, and
exactly
the snake would explode out into the...
You look like you want a chip.
Right. That was a lot of fun.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Right. So he's got that can ready to go here. But Lucian writes in section 11, he says, Alexander goes and he says, he now wore his hair long and had falling ringlets, dressed in a party-colored tunic of white and purple, with a white cloak over it, and he carried a falchion like that of Perseus. I had to actually look that up. It's a type of kind of short sword.
Is it? Yeah. How's it spelled? Fouchon?
Falchion.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah.
Like that of Perseus, from whom he claimed descent on his mother's side. And although those miserable Paphlygonians knew that both his parents were obscure, humble folks, they thought, this guy isn't born from that. We know this guy.
Right. We hang out at the hardware store with Sid and this guy.
Exactly. He's a local. They believed the oracle when it said, here in your sight is a sign of Perseus, dear unto Phoebus. This is divine Alexander, who shareth the blood of the healer. Podalerius, the healer, who is a son of Asclepius, it would appear, was so passionate and amorous that his ardor carried him all the way from Tricca to Paphlygonia in quest of Alexander's mother. An oracle by now had turned up, which purported to be a prior prediction by the Sibyl. And so this is where the Greek comes in, and the oracle.
This is oracle number 11 in the Greek, which you'd like me to read.
Yes.
And I will happily comply. So it goes like this. Euxenu pontoia par eosen anki sinopes estai tis kata tursen hup auso ni oisi prophetes ec protes degnus monadas turson decadon tepentheterdras monadas kai ecosada tri sardrithmon andros alexe terdras homonumien tetrakuklon.
Very nicely done. And this is how our translator renders this. On the shores of the Euxine Sea, in the neighborhood of Sinope, there will be born by a tower in the days of the Romans a prophet, After the foremost unit in 3 times 10, he will shoot forth 5 more units besides, and a score told 3 times over, matching with places 4, the name of a valiant defender.
Oh, hold on now a minute here. This is Harmon's translation?
This is Harmon's translation.
There's a lot of math in that.
It is, right.
It's very mathy. Can you break it down for us?
I think the whole point of it is to be obscure, right?
Okay.
So we'll see this later.
Mission accomplished.
Right. When Alexander starts spouting his oracles, he does kind of the classic oracle-y thing is that you kind of understand what you're saying, but it's also fairly misleading at the same time.
It's ambiguous.
It is decidedly ambiguous.
Yeah, subject to a lot of different interpretations. I noticed as I was reading through the Greek that this takes place near the ancient center of mustard production.
Is that right?
Sinopus.
They were famous for their mustard?
Yes, they had fields of mustard, and they mustard seed. This is where it was all grown in Sinopus along the Black Sea.
I got you. So there would probably just be one condiment available on that food truck?
That's correct. Can I have some ketchup or some Chick-fil-A sauce?
Man.
No.
Now, how do you know that?
Because
that is a very obscure
thank you.
Factoid.
Recherche. It's because when I was trying to acquire a quotidian vocabulary of Latin, and I still am, the condiment mustard can be best represented by Sinopus. Sinapis.
Okay.
It's a Latinization of the Greek word, and it's named after the town. Just like ketchup, right, is from Ketchup, Pennsylvania.
Yes.
And mayonnaise, New Jersey.
Yes.
Those things aren't true.
Right.
But it is true about Sinopus.
Gotcha. Very, very interesting. All right, let me just carry on a little bit more with the translation.
Please.
Section 12. It says, well, upon invading his native land with all this pomp and circumstance after a long absence, Alexander was a man of mark and note, affecting as he did to have occasional fits of madness and causing his mouth to fill with foam. So he's kind of the rabid lunatic.
Yeah, foaming at the mouth.
Right.
But it's all an act.
It's all an act, and it's meant to kind of suggest that he is kind of touched with the divine.
Right.
This he easily managed by chewing the root of soapwort. How's your soapwort supply?
It's pretty low. It's getting pretty low.
Right. The plant that dyers use, but to his fellow countrymen, even the foam seems supernatural and awe-inspiring. So Lucian does this a lot along the ways, is that he'll describe Alexander doing something. He says, this is how he did it.
Okay.
So, do you remember there was that show that was on a while back that...
It's like Mythbusters. Is that what it is?
Yeah, that's even better. But there was this masked guy who gave away the secrets of all the like magicians of like David Copperfield.
I don't remember that.
And it made lots of people in the magician community very upset.
I like the way you brought the Dickens reference back in.
Nice. I didn't even realize I did that.
David Copperfield.
Lucian continues. Then, too, they had long ago prepared and fitted, this is so strange, and fitted up a serpent's head of linen, which had something of a human look, was all painted up, and appeared very lifelike. It would open and close its mouth by means of horsehairs, and a forked black tongue like a snake's, also controlled by horsehairs, would dart out.
So it's a marionette.
Yes.
And you use a horsehair because it's really strong and too fine to be seen in bad lighting.
Exactly.
And all the lighting in antiquity was bad.
Right. No, that's interesting. That ultimately when Alexander pulls the trigger on his oracle,
right,
he deliberately does that in a dimly lit
of course.
room. Right, exactly.
Well, you could never light a room properly, right?
Right.
The windows at best were made of alabaster or leathered skins. So
yes. So the Abonoteichians, they already had this weird kind of puppet snake head. And Alexander says this is perfect. Lucian, to finish the section, besides the serpent from Pella, that's the serpent that he got from Macedonia, was ready in advance. It was being cared for at home, destined in due time to manifest himself to them and take a part in their show. In fact, to be cast for the leading role.
Interesting.
So the
snake puppet.
They already have the snake puppet, which they revere.
Okay.
And she says, I got the real snake. And just to get a little ahead of things, this is what Alexander ultimately does, is he takes the snake that he got, which is full grown, and he combines it with the fake snake head, which we learn later also had kind of human features. This is strange.
Getting crazy. This is so up your alley.
I love it.
Aren't you gonna drop your buzzword here?
Liminal.
There you go.
Exactly. That's what makes it weird and creepy and alluring. And so he basically fastens this snake puppet head on the real snake.
Okay.
And this gets back to your question about how believable is this? Because could you keep a snake calm enough, trained enough that he would kind of sit on your shoulders and would submit to wearing a giant puppet head?
I can't
it's hard
see
to
it.
imagine, right?
I can't see it.
Now, Lucian claims that all of this went down.
Ask your dad with his experience with the boa.
He's never spoken to the
python.
Yeah.
Lucian says it all goes down.
Yes. So Lucian says it all goes down. That's exactly indeed what happened. But it seems to it tests the limits of believability.
Yeah. So we're in section 13 now. Is that right?
Right.
Okay.
So what Alexander does then, he does more kind of burying and discovering.
Okay.
So what he does apparently is he gets a big egg, and he does like if you made like Easter eggs, you make the pinhole and you blow the yolk out.
Yeah, that'll really make your head dizzy.
Exactly. And what he does is that he gets a baby snake.
Okay.
And he puts that in the egg, and he buries it in the mud where the people, in their fervor that, Asclepius is coming, we've got to do something to welcome him.
Okay.
They've already started to build a temple.
Okay.
So in the mud of that construction site, he buries this egg with the little snake.
This guy's always burying things.
Yes, right. And
that seems to be the key to shysterism.
it is, right.
The accidental discovery.
The accidental discovery. Look what I found it, and I just happened to be chosen to be the one to find it.
Remember when we used to work at that institution, and I was trying to become the department chair?
Yes.
I buried some eggs in your office.
Oh man. Oh man, I can still smell it. Yes. Oh, that was terrible. Right. We've never fully talked that through.
This is the first time.
It is, right. So he goes out under the cover of night, finds this egg with the snake, and then, in another kind of bizarre detail, he runs into the marketplace the next day with the egg, wearing nothing but a shiny golden loincloth. As you do. Right. And he announces that the god is coming.
The listener doesn't realize I'm speechless because it's just, I'm laughing at the absurdity.
Right. So he announces that the god is imminent. He brings forth the egg.
So we'll just say about this, that dramatic clothing is a part of the ruse.
Yes, exactly.
You have to wear some dramatic clothing.
Right. It reminds me of a detail that is in filmed versions. They never do this. But when Mark Antony gives his famous "Friends, Romans, Countrymen" speech,
from Shakespeare.
From Shakespeare, but in the real historical event, when he goes into the forum
that's right.
to kind of
he's nude,
to
isn't
test the Lord, he is buck naked.
Right.
But you'll never see that in the Hollywood film, probably for good reason.
Yeah, thankfully. So he runs into the forum, into the agora, right?
He finds the egg. He produces the egg.
And he says, the arrival of the god
is imminent.
Asclepius, the son of Apollo.
Right.
The snake god of all snake gods. Is about to show up.
Right. What you were mentioning, though, the healing sites, right? These ancient hospitals. Part of the thing was that you slept with the snakes, right?
Yes.
And so that was kind of your connection to the god. Mm-hmm. And so the snake
because a snake is, your favorite buzzword is liminal.
Yes.
One of mine is chthonic.
Chthonic, yes, right.
The snake comes up out of the ground.
Right. And it's it sheds its skin, so it's kind of that notion that the snake never dies.
Correct.
So it's connected with the earth, with rebirth. And so now Alexander's got two pillars. He's got the connection to Macedonia and Alexander, but he also has this connection with Asclepius.
He finds the egg. The goose egg, the hollowed out goose egg, which he's hidden near the temple.
Right.
And he finds the tiny snake.
Right.
And what does the crowd go?
The crowd goes nuts. Okay. And that's when Alexander knows he has them in the palm of his hand.
And it's time to cash in.
Yes, exactly.
Well, we're getting a little low on time, Winkle.
We are.
How does he cash in? Do we have time to tell that tale?
Well, maybe we could just do a little bit of foreshadowing, and we can pick this up in the next episode.
No, I don't think so.
No? Okay.
I think this pretty much has to be the end. I think Lucian has, run his course.
He's run his course?
Slithered his course.
Okay, all right. So we're on to something new next week.
Well, I would think so.
Okay.
Do you think this yields another episode?
Well, I love this. I love this so much. Maybe, but I think you're probably right.
Well, the program's mostly about you. So,
so what he does then? If I may kind of summarize,
please,
is that so inside the egg, it breaks the egg open. There's the tiny snake, and then very soon after that, he appears with the full-grown snake that he got from Pella.
So how did that tiny snake survive? Is there any discussion of that? he's trapped in that little tiny egg, which is not even.
I think an
actual serpent's egg.
I think another one of these unanswerable questions.
Okay.
Right? So he lets the little snake go, and then he appears very soon after with this giant full-grown snake.
And it's supposed to be...
It's the small one.
The miraculously grown-up little one?
Exactly.
Exactly.
And then that's when he sets up shop in this dimly lit room, sitting on kind of a throne, and he's got the snake with the weird puppet head on it now. And people are coming to bring him.
Did you make all this up?
No.
Did Lucian? It is so bizarre.
Right. So if we're going on to something new next week, our listeners want to find out how this ends,
Yes.
you can find this translation very easily for free online.
Mm-hmm.
And if you like weird stuff like this, like I do, I encourage you to read it.
Alexander the False Prophet.
Yes.
Search for that. Hackett doesn't have a translation of this.
No.
Hackett has some translation of Lucian of Samosata, his Menippean satires.
Oh, okay.
And we're going to talk about that in a future episode.
That would be great.
And
Yes.
we're going to encourage readers to look into that. But what happens then, Jeff?
Well, what happens is that he makes an absolute fortune.
Huh. People stream in
They stream in.
to view the crazy snake human?
Yes, and so he has again, an ingenious fashion. So people come with these their questions sealed.
Okay.
Right, and then again, Lucian
Sealed like in one of those little plastic bubblegum things that you might get out of the old vending machines?
Right, it's like with a little cap on it.
Right.
But even tighter, kind of sealed it in lead. Right.
Okay.
And apparently, you can't open it without seriously just destroying it. And then Lucian tells us that even Alexander, he had an ingenious way of opening these seals, which had the question, and so he would read the question.
It's like opening a peanut butter jar, or if you take one of those silicone, what am I thinking of?
I'm not sure what you're thinking of.
A hot pad, right?
Oh, yeah.
You wrap it around there, and then you can just get it open very easily.
Pop it open, right?
Right.
Yes.
He had something like that.
He had an elaborate way of opening these things
Okay.
to read the question, and then he would seal them back up as if they had never been opened. And so he was such a prophet. He says, "I don't even need to read this. Just hand me the question, and
I'll give
know."
you your oracular answer.
Right. And so he would give the sealed thing back and give an answer. And that astounded the people. Like he says, not only did he give me a prophecy, he knew the question without even opening the sealed
That's
document.
incredible. So Plutarch is just wrong.
Right.
The vein of oracular divine knowledge is rich and deep.
Right. Exactly. And Lucian goes on to say, maybe I can close with this stat, is that he claims that in his first year of doing this, he made about 70,000 to 80,000 drachma for himself.
That's like working for J.P. Morgan,
Right.
straight out of Harvard.
Right. So if I could do another one of my stupid cocktail napkin
Yes.
calculations,
Uh-huh.
that would kind of roughly put him in the $12 to $15 million range
Wow.
in contemporary monies.
I guess crime does pay.
Yes, it did. Right.
So what does Lucian suggest about the political ramifications of this?
The political, I mean, he thinks this is, well, I mean, for Lucian, this is.
I'm trying to set you up for the script here, Winkle.
Oh, sorry, I'm not.
That's okay.
I'm trying to wrap this up. We're up against
I'm
the
trying
clock
to
here.
draw it out. No, Lucian suggests that he lives in a kind of idiocracy.
Oh, right. Yes, exactly.
People will believe anything,
Right.
such as the nature of the age.
Yes.
So why is this era particularly susceptible to trickery? The irony is you wrote this part of the script.
I know I did. I did. It's
okay.
I'm not following my own script.
It's all right.
Yeah. But yeah, so I think he's. Lucian uses this as he's not just satirizing Alexander himself. He's saying, who's the real idiot here? It's the people.
That's right.
It's the people that
A
are.
fool is born every minute. Isn't that what P.T. Barnum said?
That's right.
Something like that.
Exactly. Yeah. And a fool and his money are soon parted.
That's right.
All of those axioms come into play here.
Yes.
Yeah.
So people start coming from all over. What does A say of the snake? Glycon am I, the grandson of Zeus, bright beacon to mortals. And like you said, 12 million per year.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good gig if you can get it.
Yep. And he puts that money back into the business. And at its height, he had dozens, if not hundreds of people working for him.
Wow.
He franchised this thing.
Wow.
That's incredible.
Snake Way or something.
Right. Now, how much of this can we believe? I mean, Lucian claims to have met and seen and encountered Alexander. He claims to have seen the snakehead thing going on. Mm-hmm. So he's not just reporting rumor, but at the same time, how much of Lucian's tongue is in his cheek as he's telling us this story. It's really hard to say.
Forked tongue in his cheek.
Yeah, right. And that seems to be an element of these kinds of rhetorical displays of the Second Sophistic, right? I'm here to astound you, but how much do you really believe?
Right.
And maybe kind of the meta joke is Lucian kind of a shyster himself? Right? He's also fooling his audience.
Liminality and meta jokes.
Right.
A way to wrap it up nicely.
So maybe on that note,
Yes.
we should probably get out of here. So Dave, before we go,
Yes.
what about these wonderful ways that you have for people if they want to learn Greek and Latin? Tell us about
I'm
that.
so glad that you asked. If you want to learn Greek, I have just the program for you. Moss Method for Greek. Charles Melville Moss wrote this charming reader called A Greek Reader, first Greek reader. He wrote it in the 1890s. And instead of many ways of learning Greek, whereby you memorize a rule, apply a rule with one sentence, forget a rule, The Moss Reader allows you to read actual stories, but they are graduated in difficulty. You start out very simple, and you move to things more complicated, and I'm right with you every step of the way with these whiteboard explanations. I analyze for you all the grammar. So you're learning grammar. You've got Greek quick sheets, 6 of them that I've put together, summarize about 80% of all the knowledge you need to read Greek. I teach you the alphabet, pronunciation, syllabification, but it isn't dull.
You're not doing flashcards with the genitive of value.
No, I'm not.
Okay, all right.
No, I'm putting some of that into the lectures, of course, but I never allow it to obscure the storyline.
Gotcha.
That's the sweet spot, I think, that we've hit. And as Charles Melville Moss says himself, Greek should be more an exercise in your mind than your thumbs.
Yeah.
You're not flipping through the glossary all the time. You're thinking about what should this word mean in this particular setting. And I found that is an excellent way to learn Greek. I've had hundreds of students all over the world, a lot of success.
Fantastic.
Now, you're going to have to still work, but it is pleasant work. So if you tell me, I don't want to learn Greek, well, that's fine. But if you say I can't, I don't buy that. So go to mossmethod.com, check out our program. It's very affordable, I think. And it comes with one of Jeff's favorite features, which are I
love the Moffus Hours.
The Moffus Hours.
Yeah.
Every Friday we get together. Right now we're reading some Xenophon.
Oh, fantastic.
From his Anabasis, an adapted form of that. We've got students from California, from New York, from Switzerland, from Ireland, from Asia, all over the place. And we get together and we read Greek. That is a part of the course.
Fantastic.
So I don't just leave you on your own. You can interact with me as much as you want.
Excellent. So mossmethod.com. There's
Correct.
free stuff there they can check out.
Lots of free stuff.
Fantastic.
Yep.
And what about Latin?
I have a Latin program too. A lot of people teaching Latin online. Some of them probably have better education than I do. Some of them certainly have worse. Some of them have not been teaching or studying for as long as I have. You got to talk about your competition a little bit. I got my own snake with the snakehead puppet on it and the horsehairs.
Yes.
I just mean to say, I think it's an excellent value. I've studied very hard to learn Latin, and I put as much of that knowledge into the course as I can. And I think it's a really good value. So latinperdiem.com/LLPSI. Lingua Latina per se illustrata takes you from
neophyte to erudite.
See how that goes from the Greek to the Latin very nicely?
Excellent.
Yeah, check it out. I've got almost 2,100 free videos on my YouTube channel analyzing virtually every Latin author you can think of. So that's all free.
Yeah.
If you want to go deeper, check out one of my fee-based programs. I am very confident you will not regret it.
And with the Latin program, the videos include you teaching an actual group of students.
That's
right?
correct.
And you can see how they interact with you and
That's right.
the questions they ask and how you answer them.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And we have weekly office hours as well.
Excellent.
Where I meet with students from all over the world. So check that out, please. And Jeff, we have some people to thank.
As always, Mishka, our wonderful engineer, who gets this done in record time, and I was actually listening to bits of our previous episode.
Why would you do that?
I don't know why I would do that, but what I was astounded with the clarity.
It's
and
good,
the
isn't it?
editing. It's very, very good.
It is good.
So thanks to Mishka, to her as always. How about those guys, Scott Vincent and
Yes.
Ken Tamplin?
I love those blistering arpeggios and the lead-in music. What I really like is the minor incongruity between the rather staid sort of lecture that we give.
Yes.
Right? I mean, they're on kind of obscure topics.
Right.
But then you have that really nice contemporary rock music at the beginning and at the end.
Yeah.
It's appealing to me.
I love it, yeah.
And we're grateful to those guys for sharing their music and talent with us.
Yes. Yeah. So, hey, listeners, you want a shout out? If you're feeling a little berhorsed, contact us. You can write to Dave at adnauseum.com. Don't forget the V.
Or Jeff at adnauseum.com. Do not forget the V in the word nauseum. Of course, it is a V. That's why we put it there.
Yes.
And you can share with us your hopes, your dreams for the podcast, your deep disappointments. You desire to see Lazy Steve show up sometime.
Sure. Yeah.
Just whatever you like. We also have Lurch with merch at our website. You want to get a hat, a coffee mug, something to show the people that you are.
Taking in the classics and keeping them down.
Then check that out.
Yes, adnauseum.com. Again, that V is there. Yeah.
And Jeff, what are we doing next week?
Is this TBA or should we get back to Maru?
Maybe we'll run another Maru.
Okay.
Just to keep that series going.
Yeah.
But we have a lot of different directions to go.
We do.
Including coming up on a July 4 special episode, or maybe a couple of special episodes for America's Independence Day.
Excellent.
Promises to be interesting.
Look forward to that. Yes.
Jeff, I believe you have for today our gustatory parting shot.
Yes. This comes from one of my favorite comedians of the last 30 years. This is Larry David.
Okay.
This is Larry David playing Larry David in the show Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Okay.
Where he says, "Can I tell you something about apricots? 1 in 30 is a good one. It's such a low percentage fruit."
Thanks for listening.